The laptop screen cast a harsh glow across my face as I stared at the email thread, my fingers hovering motionless over the keyboard. 3 hours had passed since I'd accidentally stumbled into Ryan's account, left open on our shared computer, and I still couldn't process what I was reading. I'm Iris, and until tonight, I thought I understood my marriage. Have you managed to keep her focused where we discussed? Evelyn's message read. Remember, darling, a wife who feels too independent becomes difficult to guide. Our plan needs patience. My husband's response made my stomach turn. Don't worry, Mother. Iris still thinks everything's her idea. The transfer will happen soon enough. The words blurred as tears threatened to spill. I blinked them back, refusing to cry. The timestamp showed this exchange happened just yesterday, while Ryan and I were planning our future together over dinner. While he smiled and nodded at my career goals, he was plotting with his mother to, what exactly? Control me? Steal from me? My phone buzzed. Ryan's face lit up the screen. Hey, beautiful? Running late at the office? Don't wait up. I cleared my throat. No problem. Everything okay? Just finishing up some reports. Miss you. The casual lie in his voice made my skin crawl. I'd seen his calendar. He had dinner scheduled with Evelyn tonight, another secret meeting to discuss their plan. Miss you too, I managed, the words tasting like ash. After hanging up, I scrolled through months of correspondence between them. Each message revealed new layers of manipulation. They discussed everything from undermining my confidence at work to slowly isolating me from my friends. Even my recent promotion had been a source of concern for them. She's getting too ambitious, Evelyn had written. Remember what happened with your father when he started believing he could make decisions without me. The front door clicked open downstairs. I quickly closed the laptop and moved to our bedroom, mind racing. Ryan's footsteps on the stairs were steady, unhurried, the pace of a man who believed his secrets were safe. You're still up? He appeared in the doorway, loosening his tie. The familiar gesture seemed sinister now, like watching an actor perform a well-rehearsed role. Couldn't sleep. I forced a smile. How was work? Brutal. These quarterly reports are killing me. He sat on the bed, reaching for my hand. You okay? You look tense. I let him take it, studying his face. The concern in his eyes seemed genuine, and that was perhaps the most terrifying part. He'd gotten so good at this. Actually, I wanted to talk about something. I kept my voice steady. I've been thinking about our joint account. His fingers twitched almost imperceptibly against mine. What about it? I'm considering separating our finances, for tax purposes. The flash of panic in his eyes confirmed everything. He recovered quickly, but not quickly enough. Why would you want to do that? His tone was carefully neutral. We've always handled everything together, as partners. Partners. The word hung between us like a bad joke. Just a thought, I said, pulling my hand away. We can discuss it tomorrow. You must be tired after dinner with your mother. He froze for a split second. What? Oh, sorry, I meant after your late meeting. My mistake. The silence that followed was deafening. Ryan's face went through a series of micro-expressions: surprise, fear, calculation, and finally, something close to anger. Have you been checking my calendar? His voice had an edge I'd never heard before. Does it matter? I met his gaze steadily. We're partners, aren't we? He stood up abruptly. I need a shower. As the bathroom door closed behind him, I heard him pulling out his phone, no doubt calling Evelyn, reporting this unexpected development in their careful plans. I lay back on the bed, mind already racing ahead. They thought they were so clever, playing their long game, but they'd forgotten something crucial. I wasn't the same naive woman they'd started manipulating 3 years ago, and now that I knew the truth, I had plans of my own. 3 days after discovering the emails, I came home to find Evelyn's Mercedes parked in our driveway. Moving boxes were stacked by the front door, and the sound of her voice drifted from inside our house, my house, like poison in the air. Really, darling, the guest room is perfect. I can keep an eye on everything from there. I stood frozen on the doorstep, my work bag suddenly heavy on my shoulder. Ryan appeared in the hallway, carrying another box. "Surprise?" he beamed, as if he'd just arranged the most thoughtful gift. "Mom's pipes burst at her place. She'll be staying with us for a while." The calculated timing was impressive. Of course she'd show up now, just when I was starting to piece together their scheme. "How long is a while?" I managed to ask. "Oh, don't worry about that, dear." Evelyn emerged from the guest room, her perfectly manicured hands clasped together. "The contractor said it could be weeks, maybe months, but I'll make myself useful. I know how overwhelmed you've been lately." My fingers tightened around my bag strap. "I'm not overwhelmed." Now. She patted my arm as she passed, her touch light but somehow invasive. "Ryan tells me you've been acting rather stressed, checking his calendar, asking about finances. That's not like you at all." The look she gave me was pure concern, but her eyes were sharp as razors. Ryan shifted uncomfortably between us. "I thought having Mom here might help," he said. "You know, take some pressure off." "Pressure," I repeated. The word tasted bitter. "Right." That night, I lay awake listening to their muffled voices from downstairs. The guest room shared a wall with our bedroom, and I could hear Evelyn unpacking, each drawer closing like a countdown to something inevitable. My phone lit up with a text from Ryan. "Coming to bed soon. Love you." He was 20 feet away in our own house, texting instead of speaking. The distance wasn't physical anymore. The next morning, I found Evelyn reorganizing my kitchen cabinets. "The flow was all wrong," she explained, not looking up. "Ryan always said you struggled with organization. But don't worry, I'll fix everything." I opened my mouth to object, but she was already continuing. "Oh, and I took the liberty of canceling your dinner plans with Sarah tonight. Ryan mentioned you've been working so hard lately. You need rest, not social obligations." My coffee cup hit the counter harder than intended. "You did what?" "It's for the best, dear. Sarah's influence hasn't been beneficial lately, all that talk about independent women and career advancement." She smiled, sugar sweet. "Sometimes friends can plant dangerous ideas." The pieces clicked together. Sarah had been encouraging me to apply for a director position, a promotion that would put me ahead of Ryan in salary. "I can manage my own social calendar," I said, keeping my voice level. "Of course you can, dear." She reached up to pat my cheek. "But as Ryan's mother, it's my duty to protect this marriage. We wouldn't want you making any impulsive decisions." The threat was clear beneath her words. I stepped back, my mind racing. They were moving faster than I'd anticipated, already working to isolate me. That evening, Ryan came home early for the first time in months. He found me in our home office, supposedly working late. "Mom made dinner," he said, hovering in the doorway. "Your favorite." I didn't look up from my laptop. "Not hungry." He sighed. "Iris, I know this is an adjustment, but Mom means well. She just wants to help." "Help with what, exactly?" The question hung between us. I finally looked at him, really looked at him. The man I married was still there somewhere, buried beneath layers of his mother's manipulation. But I couldn't reach him anymore. "Come down to dinner," he said softly. "Please? For me?" I closed my laptop. "Of course. Wouldn't want to disappoint anyone." As I followed him downstairs, I could feel Evelyn's satisfaction radiating through the house. She thought she was tightening her grip, but she'd made a crucial mistake. In trying to control every aspect of my life, she'd given me a front row seat to their operation, and I intended to take careful notes. The bank statement trembled in my hands as I stared at the transaction history. Over the past 6 months, nearly $40,000 had been siphoned from our joint savings account through a series of small transfers. Each one labeled as household expenses or maintenance costs, all authorized by Ryan. I'd been tracking the money trail for weeks, watching our account balance dwindle while Evelyn paraded around in new designer outfits, and Ryan made excuses about inflation and rising costs. But seeing the full scope of their deception made my chest tight with rage. A knock at my office door startled me. "Come in," I called, quickly minimizing the browser window. "Mrs. Mitchell?" My assistant poked her head in. There's a David Carter here to see you. Says it's personal? The name hit me like a punch to the gut. Evelyn's ex-husband. What could he possibly want? Send him in. David Carter looked nothing like I'd imagined from Evelyn's bitter descriptions of her failure of an ex. He was tall, distinguished, with kind eyes that carried a familiar wariness I recognized from my own mirror. Iris, he said, closing the door behind him. I hope you'll forgive the intrusion, but when I heard Evelyn moved in with you and Ryan... He paused, choosing his words carefully. Let's just say I couldn't stay silent anymore. How did you know where to find me? My wife Sophia works in marketing too. Different firm, but same circles. He sat down, his expression grave. We've been watching Evelyn's patterns repeat themselves. The same tactics she used to destroy our marriage, she's using on you. My throat tightened. The money. He nodded. Started small with us too. Then suddenly, I was drowning in debt I couldn't explain. By the time I figured it out, he pulled out his phone, scrolling through some documents. Well, let's just say you're catching on faster than I did. The office door burst open. Ryan stood there, his face flushed with anger. What the hell is this? Ryan, I started, but he cut me off. Mother warned me you might try something like this. His voice shook. Meeting with her ex-husband, behind my back? David stood slowly. Your mother warned you because she knew I'd tell the truth about her. About what she did to our family. Get out. Ryan's hands were clenched into fists. You have no right to be here. Actually, I said, standing up, I invited him. The lie came easily. Because I needed answers about the $40,000 you and your mother stole from our savings. The color drained from Ryan's face. That's not... I can explain. Mrs. Bennett? My assistant appeared behind Ryan looking concerned. Security is on their way up. That won't be necessary, David said calmly. I'm leaving. But Iris, my wife, and I would love to have you over for dinner sometime, when you're ready to hear the whole story. He handed me a business card and walked out, leaving Ryan and me in a silence thick with unspoken accusations. You had no right, Ryan finally said, his voice low and dangerous. That money was for our future. Our future, I laughed, the sound harsh even to my own ears. Or your mother's shopping addiction. She needed help. After everything she's done for us. For you, I corrected. Everything she's done for you. And now you're letting her destroy our marriage, just like she destroyed hers. His face hardened. You don't understand anything about my mother. No, I said quietly. But I'm starting to understand everything about you. That night I sat in my car outside David and Sophia's house, their business card crumpled in my hand. Through their window I could see them moving around their kitchen, cooking together, laughing. They looked peaceful, happy. My phone buzzed with another text from Ryan. Where are you? Mom's worried. Of course she was. Her carefully constructed web was starting to unravel, and she could feel her grip loosening. I took a deep breath and got out of the car. It was time to learn exactly what I was up against, and more importantly, how to fight back. As I walked toward their front door, I felt something shift inside me. The last traces of doubt and guilt melting away, replaced by a cold, clear purpose. They wanted to play games with my life? Fine. But they were about to learn I was done playing by their rules. Sophia's kitchen smelled like fresh coffee and honesty, a combination I hadn't experienced in weeks. She placed a manila folder on the table between us, her expression gentle but firm. Before you open this, she said, you need to understand something. What happened to David wasn't just about money. It was about control. My hands hovered over the folder. Inside were copies of bank statements, court documents, and photographs spanning David and Evelyn's marriage. Each page told a story of calculated destruction, assets drained, relationships poisoned, reality twisted until truth became whatever Evelyn declared it to be. She convinced him he was losing his mind, Sophia continued, made him doubt every decision, every memory. By the end, he couldn't even trust himself to manage his own bank account. The parallels made my stomach lurch. I thought about the mistakes I'd been making lately, Appointments I supposedly forgot, conversations I supposedly misremembered. How Ryan would exchange knowing looks with his mother, their concern masking something darker. My phone buzzed. Another message from Ryan. Meeting got canceled, coming home early. We need to talk. They're accelerating their timeline, I said, showing Sophia the text. Ever since David showed up at my office. They're scared. She leaned forward. You're not following their script anymore. I flipped through more documents, stopping at a familiar name, Carter Engineering Solutions. This was David's company? Built it from nothing. Evelyn convinced him to add her name to the incorporation documents. For tax purposes, she said. 6 months later, she'd transferred controlling interest to herself and pushed him out of his own business. My hands started shaking. Last week, Ryan had suggested I add him as a partner to my freelance consulting business, for tax purposes. I have to go, I said, standing abruptly. I need to get to the bank before... The next text from Ryan stopped me cold. Mom's handling some paperwork for us. She says it's urgent. Don't go home, Sophia said, reading my expression. Stay here tonight. We can help you figure out... No. I gathered my things, mind racing. If I don't show up, they'll know something's wrong. I need to keep playing along until I can protect myself legally. The drive home felt like entering enemy territory. Ryan's car was already in the driveway, along with Evelyn's Mercedes. Through the living room window, I could see them sitting together, heads bent over documents. Inside, the air felt thick with anticipation. Ryan looked up with relief that seemed almost genuine. There you are. Mom's been helping me organize our finances, making everything more efficient. Evelyn smiled, sliding a stack of papers across the coffee table. Just a few signatures needed, dear. Standard power of attorney forms. In case anything happens to you, of course. Ryan needs to be able to manage your affairs. My pulse roared in my ears as I picked up the papers, pretending to read them. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but I forced myself to sit down instead. Actually, I said carefully, I've been thinking about our financial situation too. Ryan and Evelyn exchanged a quick glance. I'd like to meet with a financial advisor first, I continued. Someone independent, to review everything. That won't be necessary, Evelyn said sharply. Then, softening her tone, we're family, dear. Family takes care of its own. I looked at Ryan, really looked at him, searching for any trace of the man I'd married. His eyes dropped to the floor. You're right, I said, picking up the pen. Family does take care of its own. I scribbled something that looked nothing like my signature on the last page, buying myself time. Tomorrow, I'd visit my lawyer with David's documents. Tonight, I needed to secure copies of our records before they disappeared. There, I smiled, standing up. All done. I should get some work done before bed. As I headed upstairs, I heard Evelyn's satisfied murmur. See? I told you she'd cooperate eventually. In our bedroom, I opened my laptop and began transferring files to a secure drive. My fake signature wouldn't hold up under scrutiny, I knew that. But it didn't need to. It just needed to keep them confident, while I dismantled their plan piece by piece. The weight of their betrayal pressed against my chest, but something else was growing stronger. Determination. They thought they were closing their trap, but they'd just given me exactly what I needed, proof of their intentions. Now the real work could begin. The annual Mitchell family dinner always felt like a performance, but tonight the air crackled with something darker. Evelyn had invited the entire extended family to celebrate our growing bonds. 20 relatives packed into our dining room, watching me serve the meal she'd insisted on planning. Iris, dear, the plates go on the left, Evelyn called out, loud enough for everyone to hear. Though I suppose attention to detail isn't your strong suit lately. Ryan's cousins exchanged knowing looks. I set down the plates, my hands steady despite the rage building in my chest. For 2 weeks, I'd been gathering evidence, moving money, preparing my escape. I just needed to maintain the facade a little longer. Speaking of attention to detail, Evelyn continued, raising her voice further, Ryan tells me you've been making some concerning decisions at work. Turning down that lateral move he suggested? I froze. The lateral move was actually a demotion Ryan had tried to convince me to take. one that would have put me under his department's control. I'm happy in my current position, I said carefully. Happiness isn't everything, dear. Sometimes we need others to guide us when we're not thinking clearly. She turned to the table. Did I tell you all about the time Iris forgot to pay our property taxes? Thank goodness Ryan caught it in time. My fingers tightened around the serving spoon. I hadn't forgotten. Ryan had intercepted the mail and hidden the notice, then saved the day by paying it himself. Another piece of their gaslighting puzzle. Mother, Ryan warned softly, but Evelyn was on a roll. And now she's been meeting with strange men during work hours. That David Carter fellow? She shook her head sadly. When someone starts hiding things from their spouse. The serving spoon clattered to the floor. The room went silent. Would you like to know what I was really discussing with David? My voice came out surprisingly calm. We were talking about how you destroyed his company, how you're trying to do the same thing to me. Iris, Ryan stood up, his face flushing. That's enough. No, it's not. I pulled out my phone, opening the folder of evidence I'd been collecting. Should we discuss the $40,000 you stole from our savings? Or the power of attorney forms you tried to trick me into signing? Evelyn's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something cold and calculating beneath. Ryan, I think your wife is having another one of her episodes. Episodes? I laughed, the sound sharp and foreign. Like the ones you convinced David he was having before you took everything from him? You're embarrassing yourself, Ryan hissed, grabbing my arm. And you're upsetting Mother. I yanked away from him, addressing the shocked faces around the table. Did any of you know that Evelyn's broken pipes were a lie? That she moved in here to help Ryan isolate me from my friends? To gain control of my assets? That's absurd, Evelyn said, but several relatives shifted uncomfortably. They'd seen this before, I realized. They'd watched her do it to others. Show them the papers, Ryan, I challenged. Show them what you and your mother were trying to get me to sign. Instead of responding, Ryan turned to the guests. I'm so sorry, everyone. Iris has been under a lot of stress lately. Mother's been trying to help, but... Always the devoted son, I said quietly. Tell me, does it bother you that she's using the exact same playbook on me that she used on your father? Or does it feel normal now, watching her destroy someone else's life? The silence that followed was deafening. Evelyn stood slowly, her composure cracking. I will not be spoken to this way in my own... Your home? I cut her off. This isn't your home, but you're right about one thing. I pulled off my wedding ring, letting it fall onto the dining table with a hollow ping. I don't belong here anymore. As I walked out, leaving the chaos behind me, I heard Ryan calling my name. But it was Evelyn's voice that followed me to the door, sharp with fury. You'll regret this, when you have nothing left. No. I turned back one last time. That's where you're wrong. For the first time since I met your son, I finally have everything I need. The truth. The door closed behind me with a satisfying click. In my car, my phone lit up with messages from Ryan's relatives, some expressing shock, others sharing their own stories of Evelyn's manipulation. The facade had cracked, and the truth was spilling out. It wasn't the revenge I'd planned, but somehow, this felt better. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying your enemies. It's about exposing them to the light. The police officer's flashlight beam cut through my car window, momentarily blinding me. Step out of the vehicle, Mrs. Mitchell. 3 hours after walking out of the family dinner, I'd returned home to collect some essentials. Instead, I found 2 police cruisers in my driveway and Ryan standing with Evelyn, his face a mask of concern. She's been acting erratically, I heard Evelyn say as I got out. We're worried she might harm herself, or others. The second officer was already searching my car. Ma'am, your husband says you took some important financial documents. He's concerned about your state of mind. Those documents prove they've been stealing from me. My voice shook despite my efforts to stay calm. Call my lawyer. She has copies. Your lawyer? Ryan stepped forward, perfect worry lines creasing his forehead. Honey, you don't have a lawyer. This paranoia started when you began meeting with Mother's ex-husband. The officers exchanged looks. Of course they'd believe him. the concerned husband, the devoted son protecting his mother. I'd played right into their hands by coming back alone at night. "Check my phone," I said. "The evidence." But my phone wasn't in my pocket. With horrifying clarity, I remembered setting it down on the kitchen counter when I'd come inside. Through the window, I could see Evelyn watching me, my phone visible in her hand. "Mrs. Mitchell," the first officer said gently, "we can do this voluntarily, or we can make it official. Your family's arranged for a psychiatric evaluation, for your own safety." The pieces clicked together. This was their endgame, not just controlling me, but discrediting me entirely. Once I was committed, even temporarily, everything I'd said about them would be dismissed as delusions. "Ryan," I turned to him, searching for any trace of the man I'd married. "You know what she's doing. You know this isn't right." Something flickered in his eyes. Doubt, maybe even guilt. But then Evelyn's hand touched his arm and his expression hardened. "I just want you to get help," he said. "Mother knows an excellent facility." "I bet she does?" I laughed, the sound bordering on hysteric. "Let me guess. The same one David ended up in before she took his company." "See how she obsesses over these conspiracy theories?" Evelyn's voice dripped with concern. "Officers, please, before she hurts herself." The police moved closer. Fight or flight instinct kicked in, but both options would only prove their point about my instability. I had to think bigger, longer term. "Okay," I said quietly. "I'll go voluntarily, but I want to call someone first." "I don't think," Evelyn started, but the officer nodded. "Supervised call only." I recited Sophia's number from memory, praying she'd understand what I couldn't say directly. When she answered, I kept my voice steady. "It's Iris. I'm at the house with Ryan and Evelyn. The police are here to take me for a psychiatric evaluation." I emphasized each word carefully. "Could you tell David I'm sorry I couldn't finish our business discussion about his old company records?" A pause. Then Sophia's voice, sharp with understanding. "Don't sign anything. We'll have someone there in 30 minutes. "That's enough!" Evelyn snapped, moving to end the call. But it was enough. David's documented history with Evelyn, combined with the financial records I'd already given my lawyer, would raise too many questions for them to risk holding me. "Actually," the second officer said, checking his radio, "we just got a call from your lawyer, Mrs. Mitchell. She's requested we wait for her arrival." Evelyn's composure cracked. "This is ridiculous. My son has the right—" "Your son," I cut in, "doesn't have any rights over me. Those power of attorney papers were never legally signed." Ryan stepped toward me, but stopped when I flinched away. "Iris, please, let us help you." "Help me?" I looked between them, mother and son, their masks slipping to reveal the desperation beneath. "You never wanted to help me? You wanted to own me?" Flashing lights appeared at the end of the street, not police this time, but my lawyer's car. As it approached, I saw Evelyn's hand tighten on Ryan's arm, her nails digging in like talons. The game wasn't over, but the rules had changed. They'd pushed me to the edge, thinking I'd break. Instead, they'd given me exactly what I needed, proof of how far they'd go to maintain control. Now it was my turn to push back. The bank manager's office felt too small for the storm brewing inside it. Ryan sat across from me, his lawyer nervously shuffling papers, while my own attorney laid out documents like playing cards in a high-stakes game. "As you can see," she said, "these transfers were made without Mrs. Mitchell's knowledge or consent. Furthermore, we have evidence of systematic financial manipulation dating back 18 months. Ryan's face remained carefully blank, but his fingers drummed against his knee, a tell I'd learned to recognize during poker nights that felt like a lifetime ago. "There must be some mistake," his lawyer started, but I cut in. "Show him the Cayman accounts." The color drained from Ryan's face. "How did you—" "David kept excellent records," I said quietly, "including the offshore accounts Evelyn used to hide his company's assets before she took control. Funny how you used the exact same bank." A knock at the door made us all jump. The bank manager stepped back in, looking grave. "Mrs. Mitchell, the transfer you requested is complete. All joint accounts have been frozen pending investigation." Ryan's phone buzzed. I could picture Evelyn's name flashing on the screen, her carefully constructed world starting to crumble as her access to the money vanished. "You can't do this," Ryan's voice cracked. Your mother needs to pay back what she stole." I leaned forward. From me, from David, from everyone she's manipulated over the years, the DA is very interested in her pattern of financial exploitation. His phone buzzed again, more urgent this time. Ryan stared at it like a lifeline. "Go ahead," I said. "Answer it. Let her know that her safety net is gone, that her precious son can't fix this for her." Instead, he switched the phone off. For the first time since this began, I saw something shift in his eyes, like a spell breaking. "I never meant," he started, then stopped. "The money was supposed to be temporary, just until Mother got back on her feet." "Like it was temporary with David? With your father?" I pulled out one final document, a bank statement showing recent transfers to a private psychiatric facility. "Or were you planning to make me disappear like the others who stood up to her?" The lawyer beside him stiffened, clearly hearing this for the first time. "That wasn't... I wouldn't have..." Ryan's facade cracked completely. "She said it was for your own good, that you needed help. The only thing I needed was a husband strong enough to choose me over his mother's manipulation." A commotion outside the office drew our attention. Through the glass wall, I saw Evelyn arguing with security, her perfectly maintained appearance showing signs of strain. When she spotted me, her eyes narrowed with a hatred that made my skin crawl. "Mr. Mitchell," my lawyer said firmly, "your mother is not permitted on these premises during these proceedings. If she enters this room, we will add harassment to the charges." Ryan stood up, torn between decades of conditioning and the truth laying bare before him. For a moment, I saw the man I'd married, scared, confused, desperate for approval. "I did love you," he said softly. "I know. That's what made it so easy for her to use you against me." He moved toward the door, then paused. "What happens now?" "Now?" I met his gaze steadily. "Now you get to choose. But whatever you decide, I'm done being a character in your mother's power plays." As he stepped out, I heard Evelyn's voice rise. "Ryan, darling, tell them this is all a misunderstanding. Your wife is clearly unwell." The door closed, muffling their voices. Through the glass, I watched Ryan straighten his shoulders and, for the first time in our marriage, walk away from his mother's outstretched hand. My lawyer gathered the documents, her expression satisfied. "The criminal investigation will take time, but with David's evidence and the bank records..." I barely heard her. I was watching Evelyn's face as security escorted her out, her mask finally shattering to reveal the desperate, frightened woman beneath. The woman who'd spent her life destroying others to maintain control, only to end up more alone than ever. It wasn't the revenge I'd imagined, but somehow it felt more complete. Sometimes the best punishment isn't what you do to your enemies, but what they do to themselves when their lies finally catch up with them. The support group circle felt intimate yet exposed, like standing in a spotlight that illuminated only the truth. 12 women, each carrying stories that echoed fragments of my own. "My name is Iris," I said, my voice steady, "and I'm here because survival isn't enough anymore." The conference room at David and Sophia's law firm had become a sanctuary every Wednesday evening, a place where masks could fall away, where manipulation lost its power in the light of shared experience. "The criminal charges against Evelyn go to trial next month," I continued, "but that's not why I'm here. I'm here because yesterday, I saw a woman at my bank showing the same signs I missed 3 years ago. The controlled movements, the nervous glances at her husband, the careful answers about her own money." The door opened quietly, and Sarah, my friend from work, the one Evelyn had tried to separate me from, slipped in. She gave me an encouraging nod. "I watched this woman sign away her financial independence," I said, "and I realized that revenge wasn't what I needed. What I needed was to turn this pain into something useful." A text message lit up my phone. Ryan's name. I'd received dozens since the investigation began, each one a mixture of apology and justification. Each one deleted, unread. Some wounds weren't meant to be reopened. "The legal fund we're building," I gestured to the donation box by the door. isn't just about money. It's about giving women the resources I almost lost, the power to fight back before they lose themselves. Later in David's office, we reviewed the latest case files. 3 more women had come forward with stories about Evelyn's past schemes. The pattern stretched back decades, each victim isolated and discredited until they believed their own destruction was their fault. The DA thinks she'll take a plea deal, David said, his eyes tired but satisfied. Too much evidence, too many witnesses. And Ryan? Cooperating finally, though I suspect that has more to do with protecting himself than finding redemption. Through the window, I could see Evelyn's Mercedes being sold at auction, along with the other assets frozen by the investigation. The sight didn't bring the satisfaction I'd once craved. Instead, I felt something closer to peace, not because of what I'd taken from her, but because of what I'd reclaimed for myself. Sophia entered with a stack of intake forms. 3 new members for next week's group. Word spreading. Good, I said, picking up my bag. But right now I have a bank to visit. The same teller who'd helped me freeze my accounts months ago recognized me immediately. She gestured subtly toward a woman filling out forms at a desk, the one I'd noticed yesterday, the one whose hands shook just like mine once had. I approached carefully, noting how she angled the paperwork away from view. A learned behavior hiding in plain sight. "Excuse me," I said softly. "I couldn't help but notice you're filling out power of attorney forms." She stiffened, a flash of fear crossing her face. "My husband says it's necessary for tax purposes." The familiar words hit like an echo. I placed one of our support group cards on her desk. "Before you sign," I said, "I'd like to tell you a story about tax purposes, about a woman who almost lost everything because she trusted the wrong people to define her worth." She hesitated, then picked up the card. Our eyes met, and I saw something spark behind her uncertainty, the same ember of defiance I'd discovered in myself. "Would you like to hear that story?" I asked. She glanced at the unsigned forms, then back at me. Nodded slowly. As we walked toward the coffee shop across the street, I felt the weight of my own journey settle into something stronger than revenge, more lasting than justice. Every woman who found her way to our group was another link in a chain of resistance, each one stronger for having been tested. The story wasn't over, but at least now we were the ones writing it.